How much is a home really worth? It's a massive question, one that affects pretty much all of us. So today, in this explainer, we're going to ditch the gut feelings and dive straight into the hard data to find a better answer. Let's get into it.
I mean, it seems like a simple enough question, right? But the answer, wow, it's incredibly complex. And the stakes are super high. Get it right, and you've made a fantastic investment. Get it wrong? Well, the consequences can be huge. You see, the value of a property isn't just a single number. It's the result of countless different factors, everything from its location to the number of bathrooms. So how on earth do you cut through all that noise to find its true market value?
Well, traditionally, the industry has kind of split into two camps. On one side, you've got what's called the judgmental approach. Think of this as the expert's eye, or that classic gut feeling. And on the other side, you have the measuring approach, which basically says, hey, let's let the market data do the talking. And this is really the heart of our story today. Old school experience versus cold, hard evidence.
So to kick things off, let's really get into the challenge that professional appraisers are up against every single day. We're calling it the appraiser's dilemma.
A really common way of doing things involves an appraiser using their experience and these reference books to decide which features matter for pricing. You know, things like, does having a corner lot add 5% to the value? Does that brand new kitchen add exactly $10,000? This is that judgmental approach in action. But what's the problem? Well, it can be really subjective, and it often lacks direct, solid proof from what the market is actually doing right now. And that's exactly why there's this big push for a more objective way. I mean, global standards from major groups like the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors are super clear on this. Real, observed market data should always come before an expert's opinion. So the big question becomes, how do we actually use all that data to make better calls?
And that brings us to the hero of our story, a data-driven solution. It's this really powerful statistical tool that can help solve the appraiser's dilemma by, putting all that market data to the test. It's called the Wilcoxon-Mann-Whitney test. Yeah, I know it's a mouthful. We're just going to call it the U-test. And seriously, don't let the name intimidate you. Its job is actually pretty simple. It answers one critical question. Does a specific feature, like being in a certain neighborhood or having a swimming pool, truly have a statistically significant impact on price? It's all about separating the real pricing factors from just random noise.
Now, the reason this specific test is so perfect for real estate is because property data is, well, it's messy. It's not a nice, clean bell curve. You've always got those wild outliers, the one mega mansion that sold for a record price, or the total fixer-upper that went for a steal. The U-test is built for exactly this kind of messy, real-world data. It doesn't get thrown off course. Okay, so how does this little piece of mathematical magic actually work? Let's break down the logic. It's actually way more intuitive than you might think. Just imagine you've got two groups of houses. Let's say homes with a pool and homes without one. First, you just mix them all together into one big list. Step 2, you rank every single home by its price, from the absolute cheapest to the most expensive. Then you go back and add up the ranks just for the pool group, and then add up the ranks for the no pool group. Finally, the U-test just does the math to see if one group's total rank is consistently and significantly higher than the others. It's kind of like ranking all the test scores from two different classes to see if one class really is smarter or if the score difference is just a fluke. All right, theory's great, but let's see this thing in action. We're going to look at a real-world case study from the property market in St. Petersburg to see how this all plays out.
So the researchers asked a very practical question. I mean, we all kind of assume that city apartments are more expensive than suburban ones, right? But is that a statistically proven fact in this market? They wanted to use the U-test to move beyond just an assumption and get a real data-backed answer.
So, first thing, they collected the data. And what you're seeing here is a chart that shows the median price per square meter for thousands of apartment listings. On the left, you've got apartments in the suburban Leningrad region, and on the right, apartments inside St. Petersburg proper. I mean, just looking at it, there's a pretty obvious difference. But could that just be a random fluke in this particular set of data? And this is where the U-test gives us the final verdict. It spits out a number called a p-value. All you need to know is that the p-value tells you the probability that you'd see this exact price difference just by pure random chance. In statistics, the magic number is 0.05, or a 5% chance. If your result is less than that, you've got something real. The result for this data? It was practically zero, which tells us the price difference we saw is almost certainly not a random fluke. So, the takeaway is crystal clear. The U-test confirms it. That location difference between the city and the suburbs is a real, measurable pricing factor in this market. We've officially gone from a simple rule of thumb to a conclusion that's backed up by a tough, impartial analysis of the market itself.
Now, this all might seem like a neat statistical trick, but why it matters today actually goes way beyond traditional property valuation. It connects directly to the world of AI and machine learning. And you're not going to believe this, but this test, which was developed way back in the 1940s, actually shares its mathematical DNA with some of the most advanced tech we use today. It's just a fantastic example of how these foundational ideas in statistics are still powering the future.
You see, the U-test is directly related to a metric called area under the curve, or AUC. In the world of machine learning, AUC is a huge deal. It's a key way to measure how good an AI model is. But here's the cool intuitive part for us. In this context, the AU score literally tells you the probability that if you picked one random apartment from the city and one from the suburbs, the city one would actually be more expensive. It's a powerful, real-world way to measure how predictive a pricing factor truly is.
So what's the bottom line here? What should you really take away from all this? Well, first, the U-test gives us an objective, evidence-based way to figure out what really drives property prices. Second, it lets us swap out subjective guesswork for rigorous analysis of what the market is actually telling us. And finally, and maybe most importantly, it creates this beautiful bridge between the traditional world of valuation and the cutting edge of data science and AI.
And that leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. We've just seen how this method can put conventional wisdom in real estate to the test. And it really makes you wonder, what other long-held expert opinions in any field are just sitting there, waiting to be tested with data? Thanks for joining me.